is believed to be the very center of the world, frozen expanse crawling with dreadful creatures. Among them are a gigantic white serpent that consumes glaciers, an enormous gray bear whose footsteps cause the ground to tremble, and a cursed rat said to taint and poison the seas. However, an emperor who once managed to flee that land claimed these monsters were not its greatest threat. Deep in the core of the snowfield, a man confronts a savage, scorpion-like creature. The fight is brutal yet brief, ending when he swiftly cuts it down. Afterward, one of his companions sneers, remarking that such behavior is exactly what one would expect from a barbarian who wears his ignorance like a badge of pride. The silver-haired young man mutters irritably, questioning how long he must tolerate the presence of such idiots. Meanwhile, the third girl in their group innocently asks what ignorance means and whether it is something you can eat, prompting him to sigh in frustration and tell her to drop it. Later, he angrily scolds them for eating food he had clearly warned would be lethal. He is stunned that they managed to devour it all in less than a week. To his disbelief, the girl and the bald man interpret his anger as praise, treating their reckless appetites as something to admire. Suddenly, the bald man, Greta, clutches his stomach and collapses, losing consciousness. The girl panics, desperately shaking him and yelling for him to wake up. Amid the chaos, the man reflects bitterly that this life is nothing like what he once imagined for himself. His thoughts drift into the past, back to when he longed to live in a world filled with magic and wonder. In pursuit of that dream, he quit his job and set out on a great journey, climbing the tallest mountain on earth, reaching its depths. Yet in the end, nothing changed. Night after night, he prayed, hoping to escape the dull confines of reality and awaken in a fantastical realm. His life was far removed from the magic he dreamed of, but he never let go of that hope. Then, one day, his prayers were finally answered. The scene shifts further into the past. A man shivers uncontrollably as freezing winds lash snow against his face. Walking beside him, a companion warns him to wrap himself in more fur unless he wants to freeze to death. They are mercenaries following their captain on a dangerous mission to cross the notorious white snowfield. One man complains that the job is suicidal, regardless of how tempting the reward may be, calling the attempt to cross this wasteland sheer insanity. The captain cuts him off, reminding everyone that they all agreed to the task. The mercenary snaps back that no one told them it would be this unbearably cold. Inside a warm, insulated carriage, an elderly servant leans toward a young noblewoman. "Lady Molina of House Akasha, are you feeling well?" he asks. She replies calmly that she is fine. From outside, the muffled voices of guards complaining about the deadly cold can be heard, prompting the servant to scowl and insult them. Molina defends the guards, telling him not to be so severe. They were the only ones willing to protect them on this perilous journey. She even suggests inviting the guards inside, noting how harsh the cold must be. The servant refuses firmly, reminding her that she knows what lies beyond the endless white snow. "The monsters," she asks. He nods and begins recounting an ominous story. Long ago, an emperor with dreams of ruling the entire world sought to conquer the white snowfield. To do so, he led his strongest warriors and armies into its frozen depths. Years later, his empire fell into ruin, and he returned alone, his appearance aged by decades, his mind shattered. He confirmed the existence of the snowfield's monsters, but insisted that the most dangerous thing there was not a beast, but a barbarian. To him, the snowfield was a living hell, a place no one escaped alive. The servant dismisses this as an old legend, but Molina argues that the emperor's words carried credibility, especially since many of the creatures he described were later proven real. The old man concedes with a smile, adding that despite everything, no one has ever truly claimed to have seen a barbarian. Molina admits that is true. Outside, the captain suddenly raises his hand, bringing the group to a halt. Peering into the swirling snow, he says something is out there. They can barely make out a faint shape in the distance. The captain notes that the good news is that it appears small. The bad news is that it is heading straight toward them. The mercenaries tense, watching as the figure approaches. At first, it looks like a lone man, But recognition soon gives way to fear. A barbarian walks toward them casually. Couldn't stand being around the others, so I went for a stroll, he says matter-of-factly. He introduces himself as Cattle of the Achin tribe, scanning the group with a grin. What are the odds? Strangers out here in the snowfield. Seems I've stumbled onto some luck. Cattle quickly deduces that they are mercenaries escorting a caravan and advises them to turn back, though his tone suggests he doubts they will listen. He then glances toward the carriage and asks if their employer is inside. Without warning, he smiles and says he would like to be hired as well. The mercenaries stare at him in stunned silence until one asks what he means. Cattle explains plainly that he will guide them across the snowfield. Their suspicion only grows. Why would a legendary barbarian offer his services like a common sales word? One mercenary asks the question everyone is thinking. Does this mean he is not hostile? Cattle answers calmly that if he were hostile, they would already be dead. Uneasy, the men look to their captain for a decision. Inside the carriage, Molina and her servant have heard everything. The captain informs her that the barbarian is offering to join them as a hired guard. When the servant asks what would happen if they fought him, the captain immediately advises against it. After listening carefully, Molina makes her choice. She tells them to accept his offer. The captain bows respectfully. Cattle receives the news with a satisfied grin and immediately heads toward the carriage. Alarmed, the captain reacts, but Cattle tells him to relax, reminding him they are both simply employees and that he needs to speak with his employer directly. The captain warns him that any suspicious behavior will not be tolerated. Cattle offers no reply. One mercenary nervously questions whether letting him meet her is wise, while another mocks the idea of trying to stop him at all. Inside the carriage, the servant panics when Molina prepares to step out, but she reassures him to stay calm. Then, from outside, Cattle asks if he may enter. The request catches her off guard, but after steadying herself, she grants permission. The carriage door opens, and Cattle steps inside. He glances at the servant and says he trusts that he has calmed down. Molina can hardly believe what she is seeing. She greets him nervously, and he returns the greeting with a calm nod. Cattle remarks that maintaining this level of heat in the snowfield must be difficult. Molina explains that it is sustained through magic, which earns a satisfied nod from him, as if this is exactly what he expected in a world like this. He then gets straight to the point. This place is dangerous, he says, and with their current mercenaries, their chances of survival are low. He offers to take over her protection, but states that he has one condition. When Molina asks what he wants, he answers that he seeks knowledge, information from outside the snowfield, specifically what she knows. When she presses him for details, he assures her she will lose nothing by sharing it. Realizing she has no real alternative, she agrees. He asks for her name. She introduces herself as Molina of House Acacia. He responds with a grin, saying his name is Cattle and that it is a pleasure to work with her. The scene shifts to Cattle's thoughts. He recalls how he once longed to live in a fantastical world, and how that wish came true in the cruelest way possible. One morning, he woke up as a barbarian in the heart of the white snowfield. There was no time to question why, only endless cold, constant danger from powerful monsters, and the responsibility of leading a tribe. Every day became a fight for survival. For countless years, Cattle struggled to escape the miserable snowfield. But an unknown force, appearing as an incomplete quest, kept him bound there, allowing him to leave only after it was fulfilled. No matter what he tried, the task remained unfinished. Just as he was close to giving up, outsiders would occasionally appear, until he realized something that reignited his desire to live. The world beyond this frozen prison was the fantasy realm of magic and wonder he had always dreamed of. From that moment on, his purpose changed. He no longer fought simply to survive, he fought to escape. He remembers the years spent defeating monsters and completing every quest that appeared before him, driven by a single thought: one day, I will get out. Since he could not leave, the small bits of information he gathered from outsiders became priceless. Most of the humans he encountered either panicked and attacked him or went mad from the horrors of the snowfield. It had been so long since he had spoken with a civilized person that talking to Molina now felt calming, a relief from the constant presence of uncultured barbarians. The scene returns to the present. Cattle glances toward the carriages and casually remarks that they are transporting weapons. Molina's eyes widen, and she asks how he knew. He replies that he can hear the sound of blades from where he stands, making it obvious. He then asks if they are at war. Molina nods, explaining that the Empire and the Kingdom are currently fighting. Cattle smirks faintly, commenting that the outside world is not so peaceful after all. Molina continues, saying the Empire is advancing with overwhelming numbers, while the Kingdom refuses to yield, holding its borders with sword masters and heroes. The mention of these titles catches his interest. He asks what kind of power they use. Surprised, Molina asks if he does not know about mysticism. Cattle answers, simply that he has never left this place. Molina admits she does not know every detail, but explains what she can. Mysticism is a rare power, and even fewer can use it. Third-rank users can only sense mysticism. Second-rank users can actively wield it. First-rank users can manifest it as mana or aura, which includes knights, mages, and elementalists. She describes transcendent individuals who can freely command mysticism powerful enough to split heaven and earth. Sword masters belong to this level. Above even them are heroes, mythical beings who do not just control mysticism, but can influence the fate of the world itself. She finishes by noting that even a third-rank user is considered exceptional in a small region. After hearing this, Cattle smiles and says he would like to meet them. Molina stares at him in confusion. Inside, Cattle reflects bitterly. He does not know how long he has been trapped here, only that he has spent every moment struggling to survive. All he truly knows is that he is in a snowfield at the center of a fantasy world, and no matter what it takes, he will escape. He corrects himself firmly, not that he wants to leave, but that he must. Molina resumes the conversation, asking if he is truly the barbarian from the old legends. Cattle replies that one could say so, and from her expression, he can tell she already suspects it. She confirms that there is indeed a legend about him, which surprises Cattle. He chuckles, realizing that the madman he once met must have been the emperor from her story. He tells her that the legend is likely true, since such a man did come here long ago. Changing the subject, Cattle narrows his eyes and asks why she is transporting such a large amount of weapons through the most dangerous route in the snowfield. When he asks about her reason, Molina explains that her family, merchants for generations, has been crushed by massive debts caused by rival trader schemes. This journey, she says, is their last chance to avoid total ruin. Cattle studies her, then smirks knowingly. He says her plan is to sell the weapons to the kingdom, which is at war with the Empire. Molina's eyes widen, asking how he knew. He explains calmly that the Empire attacks with huge numbers, meaning it is unlikely to lack weapons, while the kingdom would be desperate for them. When demand is high and supply is low, prices rise. Even without knowing the outside world's economy, the prophet would make this dangerous journey worth the risk. He adds that crossing through the snowfield must mean there is no other route to the kingdom, and that its territory likely borders the Empire's. Molina admits he is right, stunned by his sharp reasoning. This is nothing like the barbarian she had heard about, a savage, ignorant brute. She begins to wonder who Cattle really is. Suddenly, the carriage jolts violently. The servant cries out in alarm. Cattle remains calm and says they have unexpected guests.
Outside, a massive, twisted creature rises from the snow, towering over the mercenaries. They recognize it immediately. A black slime, Cattle asks. Molina nods, explaining that it is a monster well documented in the archives. Over the years, many powerful adventurers have entered the snowfield. Few ever returned, but those who did recorded their encounters, and the black slime appears in most of those reports. She turns to Cattle, saying he must know it as well. Of course, he replies without hesitation. Rubbery creatures. Not bad as food. A decent meal. Molina's eyes widen in horror. You eat them? Cattle smirks and asks if she wants to try one, suggesting they could hunt a few. She shakes her head frantically and declines. Outside, the black slime begins to move, its body trembling as it prepares to attack. All eyes turn to Cattle, but he raises a hand. He reminds them of their agreement. He will protect their lives, but that means he steps in only if there is real danger. Gesturing toward the black slime, he says they can handle this one themselves. He needs to judge the strength of the outside world firsthand. The creature lunges, its huge body shaking the ground. Shields up, the captain roars. The mercenaries brace, but the impact sends shudders through their line. One fighter leaps high, trying to finish the beast, but is swatted aside like an insect, cursing its strength as he crashes into the snow. The captain's eyes narrow, then light up with realization. It can only move in straight lines. Spread out and coordinate your attacks. The men respond instantly, adjusting their positions. They circle the monster's predictable charges, slipping past its lunges and striking together. Steel flashes, cutting deep into the slime's rubbery body, and the creature lets out a hideous screech. Don't stop. Keep stabbing, the captain shouts. Still, their relentless attacks barely slow it down. Aim for the nucleus. It's somewhere inside, he orders. His blade begins to glow, heat radiating from its edge. With a fierce cry, he brings it down, slicing through the slime. A red, pulsing core appears, and with a single decisive strike, it shatters. The black slime collapses, its body dissolving into a hissing puddle in the snow. Panting and wide-eyed, the mercenaries cheer in disbelief. They actually killed it. Their celebration ends abruptly with a thunderous growl. From the swirling snow emerges a massive white wolf, its fur bristling and fangs bared. Aim for the neck, a mercenary shouts, and the battle begins anew. One fighter leaps onto the beast, steel flashing against white fur. When the wolf finally falls, a mercenary scoffs, claiming the snowfield is not as dangerous as the story suggests. The captain shoots him a sharp glare. Don't get arrogant. We're not even halfway through. Attention turns to Cattle. One man wonders if the barbarian is truly as strong as the Emperor's legend claims, since he has not fought at all. Another sneers that Cattle must be near the bottom of the snowfield's food chain if he is relying on them for protection, suggesting they test his strength. Inside the carriage, silence lingers between Molina and Cattle until a mercenary approaches her. He asks to speak with her, reminding her that they are risking their lives for this mission. Honoring their contract, Molina meets his gaze sincerely, thanking them and saying that without their courage, she could never have attempted this journey. Everyone else fled the moment they heard the details. Still, the mercenary presses on. There is one thing troubling them. The barbarian has not lifted a finger in battle, and they need to know if he truly deserves the special treatment he is receiving. From the front, the captain mutters that he tried to stop them, but they would not listen. Cattle, who has been listening quietly, finally speaks. He says he does not mind testing his strength, but not now. They have other visitors, ones who arrived before them. Suddenly, an ominous voice echoes through the frozen air, low and dripping with malice. How delightful! Weak humans have wandered into my domain. The mercenaries tense, eyes turning toward the horizon. Then it appears, a colossal, ghostly white serpent, its body coiling through the snow like a living nightmare. Scream. Suffer. Your pain will only improve the flavor. The overwhelming pressure radiating from the creature forces Molina and the mercenaries to cry out in agony. Cattle steps forward, his voice cutting through the howling wind. That's enough. These are my guests. Leave. The serpent's head tilts, its icy gaze locking onto him. Why are you here, barbarian? You know the rules. That's not your concern, Cattle replies calmly. The serpent's eyes narrow in fury. How absurd. I am the immortal serpent, promised eternity itself, and you dare issue commands to me. Cattle smirks. Then it seems you need to be taught a lesson. In an instant, he surges forward. The impact between man and monster erupts into a blinding shockwave that rips across the snowfield, and Molina screams from the force. When the haze fades, Cattle stands over the battered serpent. Some types only listen after a proper beating. Molina stares in stunned awe as he lifts his weapon again. A final, devastating blow follows. Blinding light engulfs the serpent's massive form until it vanishes completely, leaving only steaming snow behind. The mercenaries who doubted him moments earlier drop to their knees, begging forgiveness. Cattle waves them off casually. It's fine. Trusting a stranger isn't easy. He then turns to Molina, his eyes narrowing slightly. I have a question. From your clothing and the way you speak, you're clearly more than a simple family envoy. Why take this journey yourself? Molina hesitates, then answers. She is the first daughter of Velika, concubine to Lord Kasakasha. Her mother, brought in through a political marriage, was used and later discarded, a powerless woman trapped in a bitter life. Both she and her mother are treated little better than servants. She admits she volunteered for the dangerous mission. Someone had to lead by example. Cattle nods slowly. I see. You're clever, greedy, and ambitious. Suddenly, the endless white gives way to a breathtaking view, lush green grass. They have reached the edge of the snowfield. The mercenaries stop in awe, staring at the vivid contrast to the frozen wasteland behind them. Molina turns to Cattle with gratitude. Thank you. He shrugs. You can return through the Empire once the weapons are sold. That route will be much easier. But Molina's curiosity lingers. Earlier, when you called me smart and ambitious, what did you mean? Cattle smirks. Exactly what I said. Then he leans in slightly, explaining that her family, once respected, is now in chaos due to a lack of funds. He studies her closely, even as the daughter of a concubine. If you personally act and carve a path to save the family on the brink of collapse, tell me, who will the people choose to follow? He lets the question hang before delivering his conclusion. Your real aim is to seize true power within your family, isn't it? Molina meets his gaze and admits it quietly. Cattle smirks. It's a familiar story. A concubine's child taking on a deadly trial to claim the right of inheritance. Inwardly, Molina marvels at him. This barbarian was nothing like the shallow, half-formed scholars she had known. He possessed sharp insight and overwhelming strength. She imagines what it would mean if such power, the power that defeated the white serpent without a scratch, were hers. With that thought, she makes him an offer. If you ever decide to leave the snowfield, come with me. Cattle shakes his head. Not yet. I still have unfinished business here. Molina doesn't push further. Instead, she removes a small piece of jewelry and offers it to him. If you ever make it out, seek the Akasha family. Show them this, and they'll know who you are. Cattle accepts it with a grin. I'll remember that. They exchange farewells, Molina thanking him and hoping they will meet again before her carriage disappears into the distance. 5 years later, in the white snowfield, glowing text appears before Cattle. Quest number 1784 completed. All conditions satisfied. Another message follows. You may now leave the snowfield. At last, he steps toward a shimmering barrier and crosses it. He inhales deeply, the scent of grass, animals, and flowing water, filling his lungs for the first time in years. A smile spreads across his face. He turns back toward the endless snow and shouts into the distance, I'll never return to that hell. His first true step into the fantasy world he had dreamed of for so long. Now, with dragons, elves, magic, and swords waiting ahead, he vowed to savor every moment of this new life. He knew it was his burning desire to reach this world that had kept him alive all those years. His thoughts are broken by the sound of voices ahead. A group of people. His heart jumps. It must be a village, a real, civilized settlement. After years spent among crude barbarians who cared nothing for shelter, the idea of a proper, carefully built human town fills him with a warm sense of nostalgia. As he wonders how to introduce himself respectfully, a voice carries through the air. To all our dear elf villagers, this place will be our new home. Cattle stops, watching a group of elves unloading their belongings, smiling and celebrating. A young elf turns to an elder. Are we truly safe here? The elder nods. We are, even though this area is remote and humans cannot reach it. I understand your worries about the snowfield. The young elf's expression tightens. It's too close. What if monsters come out? The elder smiles reassuringly. Nothing has emerged from the snowfield for thousands of years. And as a safeguard, we've raised a barrier. Ancient elven concealment magic will make this place appear like an ordinary forest to outsiders. And even if monsters appeared, we have Her Majesty the Queen, whom even the beasts of the snowfield would not dare challenge. At that moment, as Cattle walks along the edge of the forest, he feels a faint tearing sensation, like pushing through something invisible. He pauses, briefly wondering if something is odd, but quickly dismisses it, unaware that he has just breached the elf's magical barrier. Venturing deeper into the forest, he wonders how much farther he must go when he suddenly spots her, a small, lost elf girl. His heart leaps. A real elf, one of the fantasy races he had dreamed of since his former life. In that instant, all the suffering and struggle in the snowfield feels worthwhile. The girl, however, is crying in fear, having wandered too far from home. Cattle approaches and greets her warmly, but the moment she sees him, she panics and faints. He catches her before she hits the ground and stares down at her in mild confusion. Well, now what? With no way to speak to her, he decides to carry her back to her village. He recalls the stories of elves as a peaceful and kind race. Surely, if he returns the child safely, they will welcome him with gratitude and hospitality. The thought fills him with anticipation. But when he arrives at the village with the unconscious child in his arms, reality is very different. A woman, clearly the girl's mother, screams in horror. "My child!" Her voice trembles as she stares at the human holding her daughter. Around them, elves draw their weapons and glare at him. "Who are you? How did you breach the barrier?" Cattle blinks, realizing things are going nothing like he imagined. The elder steps forward, eyes wide. "Impossible. A human in our protected land." Another elf rushes over. "Elder, there's a crack in the barrier." Cattle raises his free hand calmly. "Wait, I'm not your enemy." A warrior cuts him off with a cold threat. "Return the child, or I will hunt you to the ends of the world." The elder's expression darkens. "The barrier is broken. Our location is exposed. The humans must have planned this for some time. How long have they been tracking us?" It hits Cattle. They think he's a kidnapper. Deciding to clear the misunderstanding first, he gently sets the girl down as she begins to regain consciousness. "Go back to your people." The child freezes, staring at him in terror. Then, with a frightened cry, she turns and runs to her mother. Her wailing is so intense that Cattle blinks in surprise. Is my face really that frightening? A bit disheartened, he thinks that by snowfield standards, his appearance wasn't that bad. "See," he says, trying to reason with them. "I brought her back. I'm not an enemy." But the elder's voice booms over him. "The hostage has been released. Attack." Bows creak, and a volley of arrows cuts through the air toward him. Cattle sighs, wondering if anyone was listening at all. As the arrows rain down, his thoughts turn bitter. In the legends, elves were supposed to be gentle, nature-loving, and peaceful. Yet these real elves are aggressive and hostile. Then it clicks. Elves live by nature, and in nature, the law is survival of the fittest. It is peace enforced through dominance. As the rain of arrows strikes Cattle, they bounce harmlessly off his body without leaving a mark. He does not even flinch. Calmly, he accepts it. This is reality. The elves are not the gentle, peace-loving race of legend. The surrounding elves freeze in shock. The elder stares, eyes wide. With a subtle shift in his stance, he releases a massive wave of purple energy. A deafening boom follows, and a violent shock wave surges outward, flinging elves into the air like leaves caught in a storm. When the dust settles over the enormous crater, Cattle stands at its center, completely unharmed. "I'm not your enemy," he says again, his voice firm but controlled. A blazing arrow wrapped in phoenix-like flames arcs through the sky and slams into Cattle with explosive force. The impact shakes the forest as fire erupts in every direction. Stepping forward through the flames, cloaked in majesty and fire, stands the elf queen, Maria Hashian. "What is happening here?" she demands. The elder bows deeply. "Your Majesty, a human broke through the barrier and attacked us." Her expression darkens. "Then my fears were justified. This place is no longer safe." Cattle raises his voice, trying to reason with her. Wait, I'm not here to. The elder cuts him off, staring in disbelief. He's still standing. The queen narrows her eyes. So, another powerful enemy sent to destroy us. Her voice drips with contempt. She draws a glowing arrow, energy crackling around her fingers. I am Maria Hashian Kuja, queen of the Leaf tribe, and you will pay for daring to covet what is ours. Cattle clenches his teeth, frustration rising. We speak the same language, so why won't they listen? Are relations between elves and humans really this bad? Or is she simply refusing to hear me? His expression hardens. Fine then. I'll do what I did in the snowfield. If words don't work, I'll beat them until they listen. The queen releases her arrow. Mid-flight, it transforms into a massive spectral dragon head, roaring as it rushes toward Cattle. He doesn't hesitate. Energy crackles around his fist as he prepares his counter. With a shout, he drives his fist into the dragon's open maw. A colossal explosion follows, consuming the sky in blinding light. The shockwave sends the queen flying. She crashes into the ground, stunned and bruised. Cattle looks down at his fist and sighs. I really need to start holding back. Across the battlefield, the queen blinks in disbelief. He's far stronger than I imagined. From that single exchange, she realizes this man is at least a transcendent. But why? Why is someone like him here? She gathers herself. Everyone evacuate immediately. The elves retreat at her command. Facing Cattle once more, she says coldly, I acknowledge your strength, but whatever you seek here, you will never obtain it. Cattle clenches his jaw. This is a disaster. I only wanted to talk. But the queen is not finished. She begins chanting ancient words, low and resonant with heat and power. A summoning. From the ground beneath her rises a horned beast wreathed in pure flame, a great spirit. Its name is Vigo, a flaming bull said to bear the purest fire of the spirit realm. Excitement surges through Cattle's chest. The monsters of the snowfield were terrifying, yes, but they were grotesque and unnatural, more nightmare than fantasy. This, however, is different. Before him stands a bull formed of living fire, its massive horns glowing like molten gold. This is no ordinary beast. This is a true spirit. This, Cattle thinks, eyes shining, is real fantasy. The queen's voice rings out, cold and commanding. Go. Eliminate the enemy. The fire spirit snorts, his voice a deep, gruff rumble. Summoning contracts are always such a nuisance. A real hassle. Silence, the queen snaps. Internally, she grimaces. Powerful spirits were almost always ancient and arrogant. She had only secured this contract with another tribe's help and never expected to summon him under such dire circumstances. Fulfill your contract, she orders again. Vigo's burning gaze shifts to Cattle. The contract requires killing this human. He pauses. Something about Cattle's presence causes his flames to flicker. That aura, is this man truly human? Meanwhile, Cattle stood momentarily stunned by the sheer spectacle before him. As the situation finally sank in, he realized the enemy, slated for elimination, was none other than himself. The thrill he felt drained away. The spirit charged, becoming a blazing juggernaut of fire and fury. Cattle braced himself. The air split with a violent shockwave. The queen recoiled from the impact, then stared in disbelief. Cattle remained unmoved, one hand firmly gripping Go's flaming horn as though it were harmless. A slow grin spread across his face. With a single motion, Cattle released his power. The explosion tore through the forest, pulverizing stone and sending thunderous echoes into the sky. The queen screamed as the shockwave swallowed everything around her. The once green forest was erased, replaced by a vast crater. At its center, Cattle strode forward as the queen lay battered on the ground. She looked up at him, defeated, and pleaded, "At least spare my people." "I'm not your enemy," Cattle replied calmly. She stared at him, stunned into silence. After tense discussion and reluctant acceptance, the elves finally acknowledged the truth. He had not come to harm them. The queen herself stepped forward and bowed deeply. "We judged you too hastily," she said. "I deeply regret mistaking the one who returned a lost child for an enemy." Cattle nodded. I understand your caution. Humans drove you from your home. Distrust is natural. Still, it stung that no one would listen. The queen studied him closely. You are not like the humans who hunted us. This is my first time seeing elves, Cattle replied. There are none in the white snowfield. At the mention of that cursed place, her eyes widened. The white snowfield? Then you are the Ashen Barbarian. Cattle smirked. That's what outsiders call me. She shook her head in disbelief. I thought no human could survive there. Her expression shifted with concern. If you escaped, does that mean others might as well? Cattle shook his head. I doubt it. The snowfield has rules even dragons cannot break. I was allowed to leave only after completing something, a quest. I believe my case is unique. Relief softened her gaze. Cattle glanced aside. And the summoned beast, he said bluntly. The bull was split in half. The queen allowed a faint smile. There is no need for concern. Spirits do not die as mortals do. It merely returned to the spirit realm. Her tone turned formal. And I apologize for my earlier rudeness. If you desire something, I will grant you a wish. The word spirit lingered in Cattle's mind. Can non-elves form contracts with them? She hesitated. Normally no. But some humans deeply attuned to nature can form pacts. Cattle's interest sharpened. Then tell me how. After a pause, she answered. You must travel to Alto, the elves' sacred land where our god resides. There, you may find a spirit willing to contract with you. With my recommendation, a human might be permitted entry, but you must never reveal its location. After weighing the risk, she produced a glowing crystal and held it out. Take this. Even if you reach the sacred land, our god will test you. I believe you will succeed. May your journey be safe. Cattle accepted the crystal with a nod. Thank you. I am Maria Hashian Kuja, she said, queen of the Leaf tribe. He replied with a small grin. Cattle, the barbarian. Some time later, Cattle moved swiftly through the forest, each leap carrying him immense distances. Soon he reached the border of Barkhan territory within the kingdom of Jira. At the gates, guards froze as deep thunder rolled through the distance, followed by an overwhelming surge of power racing toward them. The captain's face hardened. Sound the bell. All guards assemble. The ground erupted as Cattle landed heavily, dust and debris scattering in every direction. The captain stared in shock. What in the world? Cattle lifts a hand in greeting. You're the guard stationed here. The men tightened their grips on their weapons, exchanging cautious looks. One of them mutters, was he the source of that sound? Another stares at Cattle's gray hair and the scar across his chest, eyes widening. That's the Ashen Barbarian. As Cattle steps closer, the guards level their weapons. Don't take another step, or we attack. He answers calmly. I'm not your enemy. Let's talk. One guard swallows. Then what do you want? Cattle raises his hand again, pointing toward the city gate. The nearest guard frowns. What's that supposed to mean? Are you pointing at the entrance? I want to enter your territory. Cattle says plainly. The guard's jaw drops. You what? Later, inside a modest but heavily guarded room, the guard captain studies Cattle from across the table. So your goal is simply to pass through? If possible, I'd like to stay for a while, Cattle replies. Not sure how long. The captain taps the table. Name? Cattle. Any proof of identity? Anyone who can vouch for you? Cattle shakes his head, then remembers the crest Molina gave him. Her words echo in his mind. Show it to the Akasha family. He reaches into his belongings and places the crest on the table. The captain's eyes narrow. That's the Akasha family crest. It was given to me by a member of that house, Cattle explains. The captain leans back. Akasha, the merchant family from the kingdom of Dinian. He rubs his chin. I recall a caravan from that family heading into the snowfield years ago. Their influence grew quickly after a shift in leadership. So this is enough to prove who I am? Cattle asks. It doesn't look forged, the captain admits. But it's not from our kingdom, so I can't fully confirm it. After a pause, he adds, still, it's useful. I'll allow you entry, on one condition. Cattle raises an eyebrow. which is, there are 3 others with unverified identities trying to enter. You'll form a team with them and clear a nearby dungeon to prove you're not a threat. Cattle smirks. That's easier than I expected. Don't relax yet, the captain says, leaning forward. There's a second condition. After clearing the dungeon, you'll report every detail of the operation to me. Cattle immediately understands. Smart. Make the unknowns watch each other. Compare stories and catch inconsistencies. The captain coughs, shifting topics. Are you really a barbarian? I am. The captain shakes his head. I've never seen one like you. I always thought barbarians were ignorant brutes. He stands, signaling the end of the meeting. That's all. You leave now. Elsewhere, in a waiting room, Aleandro Tyrannes, a self-proclaimed holy knight, paces irritably. Why do I have to enter a dungeon with a lowly swindler who preys on others? From his seat, the thief casts and hog grins. Still upset? Because another thief cleaned you out? Is that why you're snapping at me, old man? Aleandro's eyes flare. How dare a thief insult a holy knight? Casts and looks him over with mockery. A holy knight in dented, rusted armor? If you were the real thing, you wouldn't be here. Face it, you're just a wandering warrior like me. Same breed of insect. Aleandro slams a hand on the table. Say that again. Why? Casts and sneers. You think that scrap metal will protect you? Before it escalates further, a gentle voice cuts in. Enough. The third member, a priestess named Teofkushia, steps between them, worry in her eyes. We're supposed to clear a dungeon together, and you're already fighting. The guard captain enters the room. The dungeon requires at least 4 people. You'll have 1 more teammate. The priestess clasps her hands. Please let the last one be normal. You can judge for yourself, the captain replies. He's here. The door opens. Cattle steps inside. All 3 stare at him, shock and disbelief clear on their faces. Cattle looks over the group calmly. So you're my team? He asks cheerfully. They react in different ways. The priestess tilts her head uneasily. He's huge. Is he even human? Casts and narrows his eyes, feeling the pressure radiating from the newcomer. Hello, Cattle says with a casual smile. The guard captain clears his throat. Introduce yourselves. I'll step out for a moment. I'm Cattle, a barbarian, he begins, turning to the thief. Cass-san. The thief replies reluctantly. Cattle shifts his gaze to the armored man. And you, Aleandro Tyrannes? The so-called holy knight. Aleandro replies stiffly. You use holy power. Cattle asks, curious. Aleandro looks away. Not exactly. I'm a special case. I can't use it. The priestess steps forward. I am a priestess of Kushia, god of lies and deceit. Cattle blinks. Then why isn't your identity confirmed? Her eyes dim. Because my god is not well regarded. With introductions finished, the guard captain returns. If you're ready, you may depart. The 4 leave together in tense silence, mutual caution hanging thick in the air. At the dungeon site, an escorting guard gestures toward a massive stone entrance. 3 floors deep. Undead monsters inside. Your task is simple. Clear it and retrieve a crest. Cattle looked at Kaysen. You explain the plan before we move. Yes, sir. Cattle grinned. Drop the sir. We're teammates now. Kaysen gave a short nod and began outlining the strategy. Cattle and the warrior, Aleandro, will take the front. I'll handle trap detection. The priestess will stay in the rear and provide divine support. Sounds good. Then let's go, Cattle said eagerly, leading them into the dark mouth of the dungeon. Inside, pitch-black corridors stretched far ahead. There were no traps, no sealed doors, only a disturbing stillness. Kaysen frowned. Too normal. Suddenly, he stopped and raised his hand. Monster ahead. Cattle narrowed his eyes at the darkness. I don't see anything. Then he pointed down. Bone fragments. Skeletons. Step too close and they'll rise. Kaysen felt a chill in his gut. The captain knew. This isn't just a test. It's a way to dispose of troublesome outsiders. Skeletons, Cattle muttered, tasting the word. Aleandro spoke grimly. They're strong. Even if you sever limbs, they keep moving. Their bodies are bone, so their defense is high. Kaysen moved to the front again. Priestess, prepare your divine power. Aleandro, shield up. Cattle, be ready. Aim for the neck. Strike repeatedly if necessary. That's their weak point. Cattle thought to himself, Kaysen's a capable leader. The moment they advanced, a skeleton clawed its way up from the floor, hollow eye sockets glowing faintly. The team tensed, weapons ready. Cattle simply raised his hand. Crack! With a single casual strike, the skeleton's skull shattered, exploding into fragments. Its body collapsed into a heap of bones. Cattle brushed fine magical dust from his palm. Aleandro, Hayes, and Kaysen stood frozen, completely speechless. Cattle laughed lightly. Just like Kaysen said, once you take the head, it stops moving. Skeletons were creatures of hardened bone, far tougher than normal skeletal remains. Even skilled swordsmen struggled to cut through them in one blow, and doing so without aura was nearly impossible. Worse still, these skeletons were reinforced by dungeon mana. The accepted method to defeat one was repeated strikes to the neck until the vertebrae broke. Pulverizing it outright was, by all standards, impossible. Kaysen knew Cattle was strong, but not this strong, and everyone continued staring at him in disbelief. Cattle turned back to them. Let's keep going. They answered immediately and hurried after him, but Cattle waved them off. No need to rush. Kaysen nodded and even gave a salute. As they moved forward, Cattle paused. On the floor lay a skeleton's skull. Why'd you stop? Kaysen asked. The ground trembled. Skeletons began assembling themselves from scattered bones all around them. Hayes shouted. Kaysen and Aleandro braced for combat. Cattle raised a hand. I have a favor to ask. They all looked at him, confused. I'd like to handle them alone. After a brief pause, they agreed, stepping forward. He picked up a fallen sword. The others watched, unsure what he intended. One skeleton lunged, sword raised. It swung. Cattle caught the blade between two fingers and snapped it effortlessly. Now what are you going to do? The skeleton pulled back its broken weapon, then kicked off the wall, leaping at him again. Its swing sliced a few strands of Cattle's hair. Cattle's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, what's next? He grabbed its wrist and crushed it into dust. The skeletal hand fell to the floor. The skeleton stared at the stump, then glared at him. It kicked the sword into the air, caught it with its left hand, and spun it deftly. Cattle laughed. It can switch hands. The skeleton charged again, using a reverse grip. Cattle seized its wrist and tore the arm free. It stumbled backward, nearly falling, but recovered and lunged again, this time striking with its broken arm. Cattle caught it and shattered it once more. You're actually pretty clever. Hayes looked horrified. Even Aleandro and Kaysen couldn't hide their shock. Cattle wasn't fighting. It was clear now. He was playing with it. Kettle continued striking the skeleton as the skull tumbled free and rolled across the ground. Kettle stared down at it. He lifted his foot and crushed it beneath his heel. He asked casually whether he had kept them waiting too long, apologizing for the delay. Not at all. Kays replied quickly. Please, take your time. Kettle thanked him. Moments later, he stood over another mound of dust and announced that he was ready to proceed again. They all responded with a respectful yes, sir, and followed closely behind him. Soon, he stopped again. Kays pointed ahead. This leads to the second floor. As they descended the stairs, Kays let out a breath and suggested they take a short rest. Kettle considered it briefly, then agreed that it would be wise. Kays thanked him and bowed. They rested, but the atmosphere was painfully awkward. After a moment, Kettle spoke, saying he had something he wanted to ask about the dungeon. Hayes asked what it was. Kettle admitted it was a bit embarrassing, but said his knowledge of dungeons was lacking. Hayes replied that wanting to learn was a virtue, but she could explain what she knew. Kettle expressed his gratitude, and she asked what he wanted to know. He gestured around them. This dungeon is very close to the territory. Are there no problems with monsters escaping? Hayes explained that monsters generally do not leave dungeons, though rare exceptions exist. Those cases are usually discovered and handled in advance. Chasm cleared his throat and added that dungeons are natural phenomena. Some appear as caves, others as towers, but most tend to form near populated areas. Kettle nodded, saying that explained why it was located here. Hayes continued, explaining that when a dungeon appears, the local lord evaluates the threat level. Outsiders like mercenaries, guards, or adventurers are then dispatched to clear it. Kettle found that interesting and asked whether dungeons ever appear inside a territory. Hayes confirmed they do not. They always manifest at a distance. I see, Kettle said. Is there a reward for clearing them? Hayes nodded. There is usually a boss on the final floor, and defeating it yields rewards. For a dungeon of this size, the compensation should be considerable. Kettle laughed softly. It's just like a game. She asked what he meant, and he brushed it off, saying he was thinking out loud. Then he mentioned one last question. They told him to ask, "Who creates dungeons?" Kettle asked. Hayes looked confused. Dungeons occur naturally. No one creates them. Kettle disagreed calmly. There were too many strange aspects. They appear near populated areas, almost demanding exploration, luring people with treasure. For something natural, it felt far too intentional. Hayes paused, then admitted that, so she had never questioned it. Even Hayes admitted he had never doubted it. It was simply accepted as the natural order of the world. They found themselves wondering how a barbarian was questioning the fundamental truths of their reality. Barbarians were supposed to be ignorant and savage, beings without refinement or thought. That was common knowledge. Yet, based on everything they had seen, this man clearly didn't fit that image. Kettle remarked that it was interesting, snapping Hayes out of his thoughts. He asked whether everyone had rested enough. They straightened and replied that they had. Then let's move, Kettle said. They agreed and continued onward. As they ventured deeper into the second floor, Kettle noticed something on the ground. What's that? Kaysen explained it was a treasure chest, one of the dungeon's rewards. Kettle could claim it, provided it could be opened. However, given its quality, it would require a master rogue with proven lockpicking skills. Someone of that level wouldn't be in a dungeon like this, so the chest would normally be abandoned. Kettle told Kays to open it. Kays was stunned, wondering why he was being asked. It's a treasure chest, Kettle said plainly. You're a rogue. That was technically true. Before Kays could finish responding, Kettle continued. Handling treasure chests is the rogue's role, so I'm asking you to do it. Kays admitted he wasn't wrong, but there was a problem. If he could actually do that, he wouldn't be stuck here in the first place. A bottom feeder like him, not even recognized by the guild, had no business knowing lockpicking. But looking at Kettle's excited expression, he couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. He imagined disappointing him, and worse, remembered how easily Kettle reduced skeletons to dust. He did not want to end up the same way. Internally, he was screaming. Outwardly, he laughed awkwardly and said he'd give it a try. As he worked, he thought that if he failed, he might not leave this dungeon alive. Kettle watched closely, murmuring that he found this very interesting. Kays forced himself to remember techniques he had seen while working as a porter for others. Nothing came to mind. Still, he steeled himself. I'll risk my life to remember this, he thought. My bloodline depends on it. Kasem suddenly noticed something, and Kettle saw his hands trembling, wondering what was wrong. Then Kasem burst into tears of joy. It opened, he cried. I actually like this guy, Kettle thought. Hayes was equally excited. She said she had heard that only skilled thieves could unlock treasure chests. Kettle nodded. That's very impressive. Kasem stared at the chest in disbelief, muttering that it should have been impossible and questioning how it even happened. He reflected that he had always believed he was doing his best just to survive. But now, for the first time in his life, Kettle asked how valuable the contents were. Hayes replied that with that amount, an ordinary family could live comfortably for about a month, or even quite luxuriously. Kettle laughed, surprised it was that much, and told Kasem to manage the rewards. Yes, sir, carefully lifting a chalice from the chest and gazing at it in fascination. Kettle suddenly called out to him, causing Kasem to panic and scream. Kettle asked if he needed help. Kasem said nothing, making Kettle wonder if he was injured. But Kasem insisted that nothing had happened, leaving the others confused. Later, as they continued through the dungeon, Kasem was carrying a sack filled with loot. Kettle suddenly told everyone to stop. Skeletons were ahead. 4 of them were forming from scattered bones. "I'll take 3, Kettle said. They immediately understood what he meant. He added that he would leave the last one to them. Kaysen said this would be a real fight, and both Alejandro and Hayes prepared themselves. As Kettle stepped forward, the skeletons began to rise. Kaysen admitted that watching bones assemble always sent chills down his spine. Once all 4 were standing, Kettle told everyone to get ready. A golden aura enveloped the 3 of them as Hayes applied her buff. "Start," Kettle said. Kaysen charged first, swinging at one skeleton's neck, but it wasn't enough. When the others tried to surround him, Kettle grabbed 3 skeletons at once, dragging them away, just as promised. He remarked that this was a rare opportunity and told them not to interfere. He wanted them to handle it themselves. The remaining skeleton raised its sword and swung down. Alejandro blocked it, the blade grinding against his shield. Kaysen leapt off the wall and attacked from behind, striking its back. While it was distracted, Hayes cast Shadow of Confusion, bathing Alejandro in a bright golden glow. He surged forward and slashed at the skeleton's neck. The skeleton collapsed to its knees, but the neck had only cracked. It began to laugh, realizing it was still alive. At the same time, Kettle laughed as well. He had already finished dealing with the other 3 skeletons. He commented that it was impressive to see a party's core skills working together, and that such a sight was rare. He crushed one of the skulls in his hand and said that with the obstacles cleared, he would enjoy watching. Kaysen rushed in again. The 3 of them now understood. Kettle was testing them. The remaining skeleton looked frightened and confused as they surrounded it. They all realized that if they showed weakness, they would die. At least, they believed Kettle would kill them if they failed. They attacked relentlessly. Soon, the skull lay shattered on the ground. Alejandro collapsed to his knees, and the others followed, completely exhausted. Kettle remarked that there was no doubt the group that had traveled with Mina must have been strong. They advanced to the 3rd floor, where even more skeletons awaited them, though the numbers had increased, with Kettle leading the way. They progressed without difficulty. At last, fully focused, they reached the deepest part of the dungeon. Before them stood a skeleton seated upon a throne, a skeleton knight. Hayes exclaimed that there was no way something like this should be here. Kettle asked if it was different from the others. They explained that it was far stronger. Hayes said a skeleton knight wielded both a long sword and a shield, and unless one was a knight-class fighter, victory was impossible. This was an enemy they could not defeat. Kettle asked what would happen if they chose to retreat. Hayes explained that a report would be submitted to the territory, and if the retreat was deemed reasonable, there would be no penalty. Kettle smiled, confusing her, and began walking forward. As the skeleton knight began to awaken, it slowly rose to its feet.
And that's a wrap for today's recap, but trust me, there's so much more to come. The next chapters are packed with even more twists, and I can't wait to dive into them with you. Comment below if you want part 2. Your thoughts mean everything, and we'll make it happen together. If you're enjoying the journey, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. We're pouring our heart into every video, improving day by day to give you the best experience. Your support really helps, and a like makes sure this video reaches more people. Let's grow this community together. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.